to this webinar that we're putting on today. We're super excited to have Barry Habib presenting to everybody out there. My name is Nick Kelby. I'm the VP of Edge Home Finance. I've been asked to introduce Barry, so I'm really excited. Bear with me here. I was going to memorize his full bio and intro, but it's pretty extensive, so here we go. Barry Habib, CEO of MBS Highway, is an American entrepreneur and frequent media resource for his mortgage and housing expertise. Amazon #1 best-selling author for his book Money in the Streets, widely credited with saving the mortgage industry in 2020 from margin calls due to Fed actions. His presentation to the Fed created stability at a critical time. His notable awards: 3-time Crystal Ball Award winner by Zillow and Pulsenomics for the most accurate real estate forecast out of 150 of the top economics in the U.S. 2019 Mortgage Professional of the Year, finalist for the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, named to Mortgage Global 100 list, the St. Armand Ventures Businessman of the Year 2021, named to the list of 100 people to watch in 2023. As an innovator, Barry has founded many successful businesses across different verticals: Mortgage Marketing Guide, Healthcare Imaging Solutions, Certified Mortgage Associates, Founding Partner, and Experience.com. During his mortgage sales career, Barry personally originated over $2 billion in volume, lead producer and managing partner for Rock of Ages, the 27th largest running show in Broadway history, produced Chris Angle's Mind Freak for Planet Hollywood in Vegas, highest rated speaker and trainer for over 25 years in mortgage and real estate. Barry's certified mortgage advisor CMA course is renowned for elevating the level of professionalism and the mortgage knowledge in the industry. So with that, I want to introduce Barry Habib. Take it away, my friend.
Well, Nick, thank you so much. It's really great to be here, and thank you for everybody who's joined. I know that your time is so valuable, so we're going to promise to make it worth your while today. You know, the thing that is so much on the minds of so many people are what's happening in the housing market, what's happening with real estate. In fact, if you went to Google and see Google Trends, you see what are some of the most searched trends right now. They are recession, housing bubble, the Fed, inflation. And guess what? We're going to talk about all those things today because obviously that's what people want to know. Hey, is there a housing bubble? Well, you need to know that. Your customers are perhaps concerned about that, maybe thinking twice about buying a home. But as the title of this presentation is today, this is the opportunity that you've been waiting for in real estate. And we can't just say that to people. We have to explain why. So we're going to take that step by step by step today. And I want you to be really keenly focused on it because I'm going to take you places that people don't go to. I'm going to take you to very high level concepts, and I promise you we're going to break them down for you in ways that you will totally understand. One catch. The catch is you have to be in DC. Just like you, I've got one of these crazy things that keeps going off. Texts and calls and emails and all that good stuff. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to let the world turn without that just for the next 60 minutes here today. I promise you, you'll be rewarded. You may even think that this is a game changer for you, what you're about to learn in the next 60 minutes, and you need it right now. Look, the past few years, whether you're in real estate or mortgage, that was a time of managing all the business that was coming in. Now, things are a little bit different. We have to take more market share. We have to close more of the opportunities that we're given. And that means really being able to explain to our customers why there's an opportunity, because there's no lack of media bashing about housing. And so many people that are so-called experts are talking about negativity in housing. Now, they've been negative in housing for the past 10 years where it's gone straight up. So this is no surprise. It's rinse and repeat the same message, but they're beating the drum even louder now because they've been wrong for 10 years. And now they want to try and take a victory lap and say they were right all along. We're going to talk about that today. So a couple of spoiler alerts for you. Number one, there's good news ahead, and I just want to explain to you why there's good news, what you can anticipate, and what you have to look forward to, and when that good news is going to come. It's already started a little bit, but there's a lot more to come. In addition to that, I want to explain to you that since housing is so reliant on buyers' ability to qualify and affordability, mortgage rates are going to play a big role. So where are mortgage rates headed? And also, what drives mortgage rates? See, a lot of people think it's the Fed. Another surprise here is that it's not directly correlated to the Fed unless the Fed were actually buying mortgage bonds. So we're going to discuss that. We're also going to go into inflation and the role that that plays, and of course the Fed and what they intend to do. Hey, how about a recession? Are we in a recession? Are we headed there? What does that mean? What does that mean for housing? Is it a good time to buy? Is it a bad time to buy? We're going to go through all that. So I want you to get ready because we're going to have some fun today because this truly is the opportunity that you've been waiting for. So let's take this step by step. And I'm going to share some slides with you to kind of make it a little easy for you to follow along. So first of all, big thanks to Nick and to the team at Edge Home Finance. They really and truly care about wanting to see success in your community of real estate agents and mortgage professionals. Now, there's a lot of bad press out there, and maybe you saw the article in Mortgage Banker, which talked to both real estate agents and mortgage professionals and says, is it time to quit the business, essentially? Wow. And they cited what's going on right now. Well, if you're in the mortgage business, you know this, but refinances are down 85%, and overall volume, it is down 50 to 60%. So they're talking about, hey, is it time to quit? Now, as I mentioned, there is a lot of negative press out there. But when we talk about what's driving the market, it's really not the Fed, it's inflation. And this is a very important thing to understand because mortgage rates don't follow what the Fed's doing if the Fed hikes or cuts rates. Mortgage interest rates follow inflation. And the reason why this is so important to understand is because inflation has started coming down over the past couple of months and it's going to continue, which means mortgage rates will come down. So let's look at this chart so you can actually see it in action. The bottom line in pink, well, that's the rate of inflation. The top line in blue, those are 30-year fixed rate mortgages. And notice the amazing correlation between the two. As inflation moves higher, so do mortgage rates. As inflation drops, so do mortgage rates. Inflation goes sideways, mortgage rates go sideways. A little blip up in inflation here, a little blip up in mortgage rates. But then, hold on a second, the Fed came out and said, we're going to, because of the pandemic and because of the recession, we're going to just buy mortgage-backed securities. Now, this is different than hiking or cutting rates. It's physically buying mortgage bonds enough so that they fix the mortgage market at around 3%. So this line here, that's 3%. And notice what the Fed did. During the period where they were buying mortgage-backed securities, known as quantitative easing or QE, they kept mortgage rates right at around 3%. But inflation, while it was low initially, started to move up. Now, mortgage rates would normally follow that, but the Fed was fixing the market. The game was rigged because they were buying mortgage rates and keeping them down at 3%. The Fed said, don't worry about inflation, because you might recall what they said. They said it's transitory. They said it's going to go away. Well, obviously they were wrong, and inflation kept moving higher. And finally, the Fed woke up and smelled the coffee, and they now are embarrassed and admit that they were very wrong, and they let inflation get out of hand. And they finally stopped buying mortgage-backed securities. And as soon as they stopped and they let mortgage rates move freely, what did mortgage rates do? Well, they did what they always do, and that's follow inflation. And notice how as inflation zoomed higher, so did mortgage rates. And then last spring, as inflation kind of took a little bit of a drop, so did mortgage rates. But then when inflation took back off, mortgage rates zoomed higher. And for the past 2 months, we've seen a drop in inflation. And guess what? Mortgage rates dropped too. Now, just to put this into context with what the Fed's doing, for the past 2 months, the Fed has raised interest rates by 1.25%, raised interest rates by 1.25%, but mortgage rates have dropped by 1% because mortgage rates don't follow the Fed, they follow inflation. And there's a reason for that, is because what inflation does is it eats away, it erodes the fixed return that you receive on something like a mortgage. When you have a long-term bond and you're going to get a fixed payment for a long time, like the recipient of a mortgage would, well, every month you're going to get a check in the same amount. If prices start going up, then that money that you're receiving, let's just say it's $2,000 a month. The check will say $2,000 a month every month, but over time it buys less and less and less because your buying power is eroding. Now, if you notice that inflation is going higher, your only defense on new loans that you're going to give out is to charge a higher interest rate so you can collect more money every month for the same loan amount in order to offset the more rapid rate of erosion because of higher inflation. So once again, inflation will drive mortgage rates, and then mortgage rates will influence housing to a great extent. Okay, so we talked a lot about inflation. So hey, what is inflation anyway? Here's a simple explanation. Inflation's too many dollars chasing too few goods. Too much money chasing too few items. Now, you've seen this in real estate. You've seen it in everything, right? When the real estate market was really hot, you got too many qualified buyers that had money between loans and cash that they had to buy too few homes. Prices went up. And you see this all along with any item. Used cars. When there was scarcity of used cars and people needed cars, they had cash, they had loans that they were able to obtain. Those prices went up. Heck, even saw it with toilet paper during COVID, right? So we know that when there's too many dollars chasing too few goods, those prices go up, and that's inflation. So what does the Fed want to do? The Fed wants to slow down inflation. So what they realize is when we talk about money, do you know that about 80% of all the money out there is credit, loans? About 20% is actual physical cash. The rest is money that's being borrowed. So we really run on credit. So if the Fed wants to take these dollars away and make less money happen, they want to make credit more restrictive, which means that they make it more expensive. Hey, let me give you an example. So say a family 7 or 8 months ago went to go buy a new car, and they look at this new car. It's a beautiful $60,000 vehicle, and they go to take out a loan, and they say, how much would the monthly payments be to buy this car? And it'd be $600 a month, zero down. So that customer signs a piece of paper and drives away. Now the seller had to get paid. So how did they get paid? Somebody at a bank made a few keystroke entries, and poof, out of thin air, $60,000 was created. Now multiply that by millions and millions and millions of cars purchased, and man, that's a lot of extra dollars. That's inflationary that came into the marketplace. But today, things are a little different. So what has the Fed done? The Fed's hiked. And while that won't affect mortgage rates, it does affect things like business loans, credit cards, personal loans, and car loans. So now a family looking to buy a similar car today goes into that dealership, same price, $60,000, and then they ask, how much is the monthly payment? Their friend got it for $600 a month, but today it's $1,000. You know what that family might say? You know what? Maybe I'll just drive the car I have a little bit longer. And so there's no keystroke entry at a bank. There's no poof, here's $60,000 created. So when the Fed hikes rates, there's less money in the system, and that fights inflation. And that's precisely what they're trying to do. But there's also something that happens, and you may have noticed this, that you can actually get a rate of return in the bank these days, or safe investments like treasuries. Before, you go back 7, 8, 9 months ago, you get zero. Remember, you used to go to the bank and say, what's my rate of return? Like nothing. So people said, I'll spend it instead of saving it. But you know what? Today you can get a real good rate of return in a very safe place like a bank or treasuries. So instead of spending it, people are stashing it away and saving it. That's less money out there. And that's exactly what the Fed wants to do. That reduces inflation. Now something else has happened. Our supply chains have come back. China's opened up in shipping, and we've got a lot more goods. And that's why you're seeing inflation come down. In fact, there's too many goods. We see inventory going through the roof. Here's inventory pre-COVID. These are recessionary periods as well. And this is the same time as COVID. And you saw inventory was building, and then boom, went right down because no supplies were coming. The supply chain was broken, so the shelves were empty. Started to come back, then China shut down, and we weren't getting shipments. But since then, it's all come back and a lot more. And look at the shelves now. They're overstocked. That's why your emails keep getting bombarded with sale, 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 discount, discount, discount. And that's because there's an oversupply. Now those discounts, those sales, those lower prices are disinflationary. That's lower inflation. So that's good news for rates. Now, how do we measure inflation? And interestingly enough, we just got this data this morning. We got the latest inflation data. Now, when you take a look at this chart, I'm going to explain this to you, but this is a very important one for us to understand because it allows us to do some great forecasting and knowing when things are going to break our way. Now, it was back in June of 2022 where we made a very interesting call in the marketplace. And everyone out there had thought that inflation had peaked. And we said, no, it didn't peak. We said back in June of 2022, we said that it's going to be a brutal summer. Rates are going to go up over the summer. And it won't be until, we gave a specific date, said this on TV, said this in countless amounts of speeches and seminars and webinars, that November 10th would be the date where rates would start coming down. And as it turned out, it was exactly on November 10th that rates started coming down. So how did we know that? But more importantly, let me teach you how you can know that and how you can forecast it. It's very important because look, Here we are in 2023. Information is everywhere, but wisdom is still a very valuable commodity that customers will pay for and want to seek your advice on and want to do business with you. All right, so let's understand this. When we look at inflation, one measurement of inflation is the Consumer Price Index. You probably have heard that term before, the CPI, Consumer Price Index. Now, that includes pretty much everything, but then there's a component called the core level of Consumer Price Index, which eliminates food prices and energy prices. Now, a lot of people scoff and say, hey, I need food and energy, right? Why are you stripping that out? Well, it's because when the Fed looks at something like this to shape monetary policy in the United States, they know that they can influence things and consumer behavior with interest rates, except food prices and energy prices. The Fed can hike rates, the Fed can cut rates. Food prices are going to be influenced a lot by weather. Energy prices will be pipelines and OPEC. Fed can cut or hike rates. It's not going to change what OPEC does. It's not going to change the weather. So they look at the core rate specifically because that's what they feel they can influence. And as of this morning, the most recent data that we got is the year-over-year level of core inflation is 5.7%. Now that's come down a lot, and that's a big improvement, but this is still higher than the Fed wants. And we hope that this number comes down. And remember, mortgage rates are going to follow this number. It's going to follow inflation. So how do we get to this 5.7%? Well, quite simply, each individual month has its own inflation component. So the data that we got today was for December of 2022. So if we count the 12 months starting January 2022 to December of 2022, you add them all up, account for a little rounding, bingo, 5.7%. Pretty simple. So what's actually happening with the number that we got today, we got the number for December of 2022. That was 0.3%. It replaced December of 2021, which showed a reading of 0.6%. So when you replace 0.6 with 0.3, the number went down, and that's exactly what happened today. The inflation reading went from 6% to 5.7%, and the mortgage environment liked that, which is a good thing. So let's go back to June of 2022, when everybody said inflation had peaked. Why did they say that? Well, as you now know, the June of 2022 number replaced June of 2021. And because June of 2021 was higher and June of 2022 was lower, the year-over-year inflation reading went down. Everybody said, hey, inflation's peaked. But even the Fed has admitted that they don't understand this, which is why I want to show you this, because getting this knowledge puts you in a very exclusive group of having this type of knowledge. You see, we felt that inflation would be somewhat persistent because the Fed just started with their first 75 basis point interest rate hiking in June. And it takes time for that to filter through. And now since then, the Fed's hiked quite a bit since then. But it takes time for these things to slow consumer behavior, to realize that their loans cost more and they're going to buy a little bit less and for the economy to slow. So we didn't think it would happen until October. This was in June. We figured by October, these things would filter through. Now, the data for October was going to come out November 10th. And the October reading is right here. It did filter through. We did get a lower reading, so we were correct on that. But we also thought that the summer would be tough on mortgage rates. We felt inflation would go up. Why? Well, because we knew that July, August, and September, while we didn't know what the numbers were going to be yet, we knew that they were going to be replacing July, August, and September of 2021. Now, put your thinking cap on for me. Take a look at July, August, and September. Do you notice anything about these numbers? They're very low. If you said they're very low, congratulations, you're right. So these numbers were very low and therefore likely that they'd be replaced by higher numbers, meaning that inflation would go up, meaning that mortgage rates would go up. And that's exactly what happened. As you can see here, as these numbers for August and September specifically replaced these very low numbers for August and September of 2021, it caused inflation to zoom higher. And along with that, we saw mortgage rates go from the high 5s to the low 7s. And that really sent shockwaves through. But we were anticipating that. Now, let's get back to also saying on your calendar, I want you to circle November 10th. On November 10th, sure enough, we got that data that was good. It replaced higher data, and the inflation numbers started to come down. And indeed, the bond market had its very best day that it had had in years. And what we've seen since then is we've seen continued low numbers as the economy slows down, replacing some of these high readings. And that's causing the inflation numbers to come down, 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 down. As you can see, in the first half of 2022, these inflation readings, except for March, were pretty darn high. What we expect to see as we go through 2023 and the first half of 2023, we should continue to see lower readings come in, bringing the year-over-year number down and bringing mortgage rates down. Now, where will mortgage rates go? I'll tell you in a moment. But first, we have to understand a very important component of this number, and that is shelter, the cost of putting a roof over your head, whether it be something that they call owner's equivalent rent or actual rents. These are shelter costs that are put into this number, and the shelter cost, it's very important because these shelter costs represent almost 40% of this number, so it's big. Now, the next inflation readings we're going to get are Valentine's Day. We're going to get one March 14th, April 12th, and then May 10th. Now, I want you to kind of circle May 10th on your calendar right now, because what we're telling you is similar to what we said was going to happen November 10th. We see the same setup. We see the stars aligning for a very big rally, a very big day, and lower rates right around this May 10th data coming out. So just put that date in the back of your mind or circle it in your calendar. All right. I mentioned that almost 40%, it's actually 39.3% of that CPI core number is shelter costs. Now, shelter costs, something is interesting is happening with that, and that of late they've been coming down. The costs of rent, the cost of owner equivalent rent, in real time, in the real world, they're coming down. But the way it's looked at in these reports is there's an averaging component, because they don't look at it just the real number, just like when we looked at the CPI number, right? You see the December of 2022 has equal weight as January did, a number from 12 months before that, or 11 months, or 10 months, or 9 months. It's not really weighing what's happening in real time in the real world. It's taking into account what happened 12 months ago, 11 months ago, 10 months ago, equally as important. But we know in the real world, things are coming down. So if you take a look at the way it's being influenced inside of CPI, it's showing that shelter costs are going up inside of CPI. And that's because of this averaging effect. Kind of reminds you, this loop here reminds you of a roller coaster, right? So remember, if you went on a roller coaster, that big first hill, the roller coaster gets to the very top, and then at some point, the front of the roller coaster is going down. But at the same time, the back of the roller coaster is actually going up. And that's kind of like what's happening with these shelter costs in CPI. See, in real time, we see them coming down. But the way it's reported in the inflation reports that drives mortgage rates, that drives housing, is pressuring it up. So while those CPI numbers are still coming down, there's a big chunk of it, 40% of it, is still pushing it higher. Now, when will this all start to favor us and come down? In April. When we get April's data, all of this will start to come down. Now, when will we get it? We get it on the date that I told you to circle in your calendar, May 10th. So this will start to show inflation coming down much faster and mortgage rates come down much faster come the spring. That's going to be a real good time for us, folks, right in the middle of the spring. So, okay, how low will rates go? This chart, I think, gives us some very good clues. Now, we created this chart. We did a lot of work. We put 35 years worth of data. And what it's showing you, and this is on one page, the blue line, that's the US 10-year Treasury rate. And as you can see, it has a pretty good relationship to the yellow line, which is 30-year fixed rate mortgages. Now, they're not exact, but you can see they trend similarly. And because this is 35 years worth of data, day to day things can change, week to week things can change. But over time, you can see it's pretty darn close. And the spread between the two is about 175 to 200 basis points. And if you don't know exactly what that means, it means 1.75% to 2% higher. So in other words, if the 10-year Treasury were, let's say 5, so let's find when it was 5, right here. When the 10-year Treasury is at 5, add 2% above that. Here you go. And mortgage rates should be at 7, and that's where they are. Here, the 10-year Treasury is at 5. Where are mortgage rates? At 7. If the 10-year Treasury is at 4, mortgage rates should be at 6. So you get the picture. About 2% higher than the 10-year Treasury is where mortgage rates should be, pretty darn close to that,
over time. Except something happened recently. This 35-year relationship got blown out of the water. It wasn't 2% higher. It was 3% higher just a couple of months ago. So what the heck happened? When the 10-year treasury went a little over 4, well, mortgage rates should have been over 6, but they weren't over 6. They were over 7%. Why? This is a very important clue in helping us understand where mortgage rates are going. So you see, when we take a look at mortgages, no one holds a mortgage. In other words, the company that you write your mortgage payment check to, if it's a fixed rate, they're not holding that hot potato because that's subject to a lot of risk, not prepayment risk, but interest rate risk. So that gets sold and securitized and put into bonds. But hold on a second. Who's going to do the work of collecting those payments, making sure the taxes are paid, the insurance is paid, tracking you down if you're late, answering your questions, all that good stuff, giving you your tax forms? That's the job of a servicer because they service the mortgage. Now, they don't do that out of the goodness of their heart. They actually get a fee for that. That's called a servicing fee. So how much is the value of that servicing fee? Well, they're going to get paid every month to do it. So if you were to take it and build it into the mortgage and say it's a value within the mortgage, how much is that value? Well, you have to estimate how long that mortgage is going to be. So if I'm going to get that fee for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, kind of like the normal life of a mortgage, well, that's a big fee. And that adds to the value of the mortgage. And the way the bond prices work, the higher the bond price, the more value. It's like a seesaw. The lower the rate goes. But recently, all that value got sucked out. So the price of mortgage bonds went down, driving the rate disproportionately higher. And that's why it got the 3%. So why was the value sucked out of it? Why did it disappear? It's because the smartest money on the planet is agreeing with us. They did not believe that 7% mortgages were going to last. They felt that inflation was going to come down, just like we did. And they agreed with us that interest rates would come down. So what happens when interest rates come down? Those 7% mortgages were going to get refinanced, which means that you're not going to get paid for servicing it very long. It's not measured in years, it's measured in months. So there's essentially no servicing value, driving the price of mortgage-backed securities lower and increasing the interest rate. Now, what we also said was we said that the 10-year treasury would drop with inflation, and it has. It's gone from 4.3% all the way down to 3.5%. But guess what happened to mortgage rates? They came down faster. They've gone from 7.25% down to 6 1/8. They came down disproportionately faster. So instead of 3% higher, it's now 2.6% higher. So that spread is getting narrower. That's because a 6% mortgage will have more servicing value than a 7, right? Because you'll refinance a 7% loan faster than you would a 6, and you'll refinance a 6 faster than a 5. So as inflation continues to come down, when it gets to 3%, and we believe it'll get there, we think it gets even under there, what will mortgage rates do? They will come down even faster, meaning that you will see normalization of the spreads occur. So what's normal? Well, if the 10-year treasury is at 3, where do you think mortgage rates should be? Right around 5. And that's what we're telling you mortgage rates are going to. They're going to 5% in the first half of this year. And what does that mean? You take all these buyers on the sidelines that are hibernating because rates have gone up, and you unleash them into what is a very tight inventory environment, and what happens to prices on homes? They go up. When do you want to be a buyer? Do you want to be a buyer after the price has gone up, or seeing the opportunity before nobody else does? Now listen, another factor is recession. There is a recession either here or coming. So why hasn't it been evident yet? I'll tell you. It's because people are living off their credit cards. Look at these credit card balances. We thought the credit card balances before COVID was high, right? And this is the recession, these gray areas. But then COVID hit and everything got shut down and there was no supplies. So people were not able to spend. Plus they got stimulus money. What did they do? They paid off their credit cards. But then things started to open up. And people liked having that extra stimulus money. They liked the lifestyle. So they started to spend again. And they like spending. In fact, they like it so much that without the stimulus, they love the lifestyle. They don't like to give it up. So while I don't have stimulus, I still have my credit cards, and they have now put us in record high credit card balances. At the same time, look at the savings rate. Before COVID, the savings rate was about 10%. Then we got our stimulus money. Oh, stimulus 1, we got some money in savings, but then we'll spend that pretty quick. Stimulus 2, we got some extra savings, but look how quick they spent it. Stimulus 3, savings, look how quick it got spent. And now we go past our previous levels and we are living off of our savings. And we have gone from 10% savings rate pre-COVID to 3. So why don't we have a recession yet, or why doesn't it feel like a recession yet? It's because people are living off credit cards and their savings. But folks, both of these have an expiration date. And there are other things like the inversion in the yield curve that you've heard about that lead us into recession. There's so many recessionary clues. So why is it important to talk about? Because let's see what happens to mortgage rates during recessions. The gray areas are the last several recessions. And the last time we had a recession, we saw mortgage rates drop by 1% and then drop more. The one before, mortgage rates dropped by 1 1/8 and then more. Here they dropped almost 1% and then a lot more. Here, 2% and more, 5% and then more, 4%. You get the picture. The bottom line is mortgage rates drop during recession. So if you're asking me, hey Barry, you're thinking about 5% rates, they're a little over 6 now. Can we go from 6 1/8 to 5? Yes, 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 yes. We can get there. Maybe even lower than that. But what about housing? If we have a recession, man, wouldn't that be bad for housing? Well, if the media is going to talk to you about it, of course they're going to say it's terrible for housing. But rather than listen to the media, can we just look at the facts and understand it? Here's the past 9 recessions. I'm going back 65 years here. The past 9 recessions tell us that 8 out of 9 recessions, home values did very well during and after 8 out of 9 recessions. One time was here during the housing bubble. But it wasn't the recession that came first. It was actually the housing bubble that came first that put us in a recession. So what caused the housing bubble? If it wasn't the recession, what was it? Well, you probably already know some of the clues was those crazy programs. Here you go. You got a mirror. Can you fog it up? Do you have a pulse? You're approved, right? No income, no asset. What do you even need a job for? 0 down payment, 580 credit score. What could go wrong with those loans, folks, right? So we don't have any of those crazy programs anymore. So that's a big part of it. But even with that, at its core, the heart of the reason for the housing bubble was like any other economic equation. It's supply and demand. There was just simply too many homes that were available in inventory and too few people buying them. We look at that and measure it by something called household formations for demand and household completions for supply. You see, it's not somebody selling their home because they've got to move someplace else. They got to have a roof overhead someplace else. So that's kind of neutral on inventory. We look at builders completing a home that's ready to move into. That adds to supply. That's easy. So how do we measure demand? We measure demand by something called household formations. And here's how you look at that. Imagine a family. So you got mom, dad, and a child. The 3 of them live in one household together. But there comes a time in that child's life, and in the United States, the average age is age 33, where they get up and they get their own household. So now you've got the same family, mom, dad, and a child, except instead of one household, they have formed another one. They now have 2, so they formed a household. I'm going to show you a chart here which shows you both household formations and completions and goes back 20 years. So as we look here, what you'll see is the blue line, that's households being formed. That's that 33-year-old going out and getting their place. The gold bar back in 2004 is how many homes were completed by builders to meet that demand. Now, even though there's a few more homes there's a little bit more homes than the amount of demand. That's normal due to the fact that over time, homes age, so they have to be replaced. So builders actually have to build about 100,000 more homes a year than what the demand is to keep it equilibrium. And you see the same thing happen in 2005, and the housing market was fine. But then something crazy happened in 2006, right? Take a look. Builders built more homes than they ever have, even through today. Crazy amount of homes they built. But what the heck happened to those household formations? Where'd those 33-year-olds go? It dropped off a cliff. And the following year, it dropped again. Then it stayed low before moving up. Now, this will also tell you why the housing market has been so strong in the past several years, and that's because there's been much more demand than supply. Causes prices to go up. Here, you had much more supply than demand, and it was so much more supply that this caused a problem in the housing market in 2006, a big problem in 2007, and a full-blown bubble by the time 2008 came, because there's so much more supply than demand. So our big question is, as everybody's out there screaming, oh, housing bubble, can this happen again? Let's understand what caused the housing bubble. Because look, if it can happen again, we need to be careful, right? So why did all these 33-year-olds drop off of a cliff? And can it happen in 2023? Well, in 2006, if you're 33 years old, what year were you born? Well, you were born in 1973. How about if we take a look at birth rates in 1973 and see, was there a change from 1972 to 1973 in birth rates that caused this? Let's take a look. And take a look at 1973 here and look at the big drop in births from 1972. So these people that were born in 1973, they were your 33-year-olds in 2006. And there's a reason why there was so much fewer of them. It's because so many fewer of them were born 33 years before. And notice in 1974, another drop before flattening out and going up. Now, if we fast forward 33 years, remember this pattern here. Big drop, flat, goes up. Let's take a look 33 years before that. Holy cow. Big drop, flattens out, and then goes up. It's exact same pattern. Well, it has to be, right? These people were born, so they're going to have those patterns 33 years later. So this gives us a lot of clues. Now, what was the reason for that big drop? So we know, can it happen again? I will tell you the statistical reason. Now, please remember, I offer no opinions. I just give you statistical reason here. It was because abortions were legalized in January of 1973. And as a result, much fewer children were born. And as a result, 33 years later, much fewer households were formed. Now, because births take a while, it carried over to the next year, finally before bottoming out and then starting to grow again. So now, as we want to look forward, what's going to happen in the future? Can this happen again? Well, in 2023, the crop of buyers, where are they going to come from? They're going to come from those 33-year-olds in 2023, which means they were born in 1990. How about you take a look at birth rates in 1990? Oh, this is a pretty different picture, isn't it? See, this is housing bubble territory. This is housing growth. This is a lot of demand. So are we going to be in a bubble-like condition? How can you if you have so much demand? You see, people don't understand it, and the media is a huge culprit here because they just strike fear. The media doesn't care about the truth. The media cares about getting eyeballs so they can get more advertising money for ratings. So they know that fear is a big component of getting those eyeballs. And there are so many people out there, whether it be Gary Vee, whether it be even our industry like Housing Wire, whether it be the people like Grant Cardone, or even a dear friend of mine who's brilliant, who's been talking a lot about housing bubble, Patrick Bet-David. They have been sparking a lot of these discussions and getting people very worried about housing bubble. But the queen of this discussion has been Diana Olick, who has been talking housing bubble nonstop, twice a day, for now 8 years on CNBC, and making a lot of people nervous and shying them away from buying homes. So what has Diana Olick said over these past hundreds and hundreds of negative reports about housing over the past 10 years? Well, I'm going to just show you a few clips just to give you an idea. Now, back 8 years ago, and by the way, housing has done nothing but go up for 8 years. 8 years ago, Diana Olick said, housing today, we're in a bubble larger than 2006. Obviously, we weren't. She was dead wrong. But if you were scared of buying a $300,000 home, you missed out just in that year in a 5% rate of return or $15,000. So the next year, did she come on and say, hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong? No, she just said 7 years ago, she said, we're in a new housing bubble. But prices went up again and people lost more money because they listened to her. So in 2017, she said, home ownership does not build wealth. Can you point to just one person who hasn't built wealth in home ownership in the past 6 years? Of course not. She was dead wrong again. And values in that year went up again. In 2018, she said, don't buy a home. You're much better off renting. Can anybody point to the one person who said, oh goodness, I'm so happy I didn't buy a home 5 years ago and see the price go up. I'm really happy I threw my money away renting for the past 5 years. Dead wrong again. In the middle of 2019, she tried to scare people again, say, I'm coming up with a big feature story. So if you're thinking about buying a home, stop and listen to me before you do. And she told people to rent and not buy a home because she said the housing market's about to shift in a bad way. but it didn't. It only went up from there. And at the end of 2019, she gave her forecast for 2020. Guess what she said? Take a wild guess. She said, next year's going to be hard on the housing market. Don't buy, rent. But housing prices soared 16%. Then a year and a half ago, she gave the advice of don't buy because the housing boom is over. But since then, values have gone up 18%. You know, if you would have listened today on a bullet, you would have missed out on life-changing money of $250,000 on a $300,000 home. It's even worse if the home was bigger and you were afraid and listened to her and didn't buy a home. This is what the media does. Now, look, in the past 12 months alone, home values have gone up 10%. Now, right now, they're kind of leveled off. But what I'm telling you is if rates come down, you will see home prices start to accumulate. But people will tell you, hold on, Barry, you talked about a tight inventory environment, but inventory is rising. We've seen people show this and say, this is a red flag, inventory is going up. Maybe it is. Look at this. Wow, inventory definitely did go up here. Now it's come down a little bit, but it's gone up right here. Is that something we should be concerned about? The thing of it is, when they show you this, they show you 1 year. And what I'd like to know is, can we see a longer view so we can see if there's a pattern? So I'm going to show you not 1 year, but 10 years. And can you please tell me if you see a pattern? Yeah, here's the 1 year they show you. But notice how this happens every year. So it's not something to be worried about. So why does this cycle happen? I'll explain it to you. It has to do with schools. You see, if a child leaves school in the middle of the school year and goes to another school, we all know how tough kids can be. We all know how tough it is to form new friendships in the middle of the school year when everybody's already had their friendships. So that's one aspect. But the other is grades. Look, you could be thriving and doing great based upon the curriculum you're learning and the building blocks of that. But now if you're ripped out of that and thrown into some new curriculum, poor kid can be lost and their grades could suffer. So parents don't want that. So when do I want my kid to start? I want my kid to start at the beginning of the school year, which means when do I have to be in my new home? You know when? June, July, or August. So when do I have to sell or get rid of my home and put it on inventory? When? April, May, June, July. April, May, June, July. Every single year, over and over and over and over again. That's why this cycle occurs, folks. But the media won't tell you that. Just like the media tells you, oh, it's a housing bubble, and they don't look at the fact of what's inventory. During the housing bubble, there were 4 million units for sale. You know how many units are for sale now? 1.14 million units for sale. 3 million less units for sale. But hold on a second. Since 2007, our population's grown by 30 million more Americans. So you've got 30 million more people fighting for 3 million fewer homes. How can you possibly have a bubble? Now, even though I told you it's 1.14 million homes, it doesn't tell the whole story because it includes those that are already off the market because they're already sold and under contract, but they just haven't closed yet. When you take a look at active inventory, it's only 750,000. Our country has 340 million people, and there's only 750,000 homes in inventory of active listings. Now, team, how does that compare? It's half of what we normally could expect. Half, right here. Now, somebody might tell you, oh, it's up from last year. But it's half of the normal. This was extraordinarily low. Here's another one. CBS Market Watch tells us, dramatic increase. Foreclosure bonds are up more than 150%. Oh no, that's got to be bad, right? Well, yeah, they are up 150% from last year. But guess what? Last year, for most of the year, you couldn't do foreclosures. There was a moratorium. So yes, it's up from this crazy low number. But when you compare it to a year where there wasn't a moratorium, because there was for part of 2022, in 2019, which was a normal year, we were down 60%. Does it say we're down 95% from a tough year? No, the media won't tell you that. Will the media tell you that today 58% of a home's value is equity and only 42% of a mortgage is mortgaged on average? Whereas back in 2008, when we had the housing bubble, just 19% was equity and 81% was mortgage? No, they will not tell you that. You know why? Because good news doesn't sell. What sells in the media? Okay, obviously sex sells. But so does fear, right? Folks, what this is a version of fear porn. That's what you're watching here. Don't believe in it. And affordability is another big thing. We see this all the time, but you've got to be smart. You've got to be able to parse through and see into the future. Let me show you. Last year, if you wanted to buy a home and you needed a mortgage of, let's say, $400,000. Now, last year, the rate was 3.5%. That means that your payment was, let's call it $1,800. Now this year, home values have gone up 10% since then, right? So that means you're going to borrow $400,000 more. About 10% more. So it's a bigger mortgage of $440,000. The rates today that you have, though, are much higher. They're about 6 1/8. Let's call it 6 1/4, and that means the payment is about $900 a month more. A lot more expensive, and that's where the media stops. And they say, "Hey, it's much less affordable." And yes, if you looked at it just like this, it's true. But when you were looking last year at a home, according to Fannie Mae, the average household income of buying this was about 2 income earners earning about $50,000 a year. So they were making about $9,000 a month. That's according to Fannie Mae. Since then, if you take a look, their income's gone up. How much has it gone up? Well, fortunately, the folks at ADP, they measured, get this, 25 million records, an enormous sample size. And they tell you if you stayed at your job, your income went up 7.3% from last year to this year. And if you switch jobs, it actually went up 15%. Now we know more people stay than switch, so the average is about 9%. So your income's gone up almost as much, not as much, but almost as much as the payment. The problem is that so have your other costs. Gasoline, food, services, all this is costing more, and this is the market we're in now. This is the gap that we have. People are waiting due to the fact that they're saying, you know what, it's just a little bit of sticker shock. It's costing a lot more money than it did a year ago. But wait a second. Will we freeze in time like this? What happens to your income as we go through the year of 2023? Well, according to ADP, it should go up 7.3%, but let's be conservative. Let's say it only goes up 5%. You know you've eliminated this entire disparity. And one other thing, what happens if we're right, and we believe we will be, and mortgage rates go down? Well, then you can totally argue that you will be much more affordable to buy a home during 2023 than you were in 2021. And what happened to home values in 2021? I'm not suggesting that they're going to go up as rapidly, but certainly we believe home prices go up because of lower inflation, a recession-like slowdown bringing interest rates down, incomes increasing to help affordability, tight inventory, and look, rents are no picnic. They're expensive and still rising. So we see low single-digit appreciation for most of the U.S. with a pickup in activity. And don't think that low-digit appreciation isn't exciting. If you get 4% appreciation on a home and you put 10% down, the return on your investment is 40%. Now add to that today you could probably get a small discount on that home. So you can get a huge return on investment by taking advantage of this opportunity in advance and seeing it. Team, I believe sincerely that this sets up, as the title states, for the perfect opportunity in housing. Why? Well, a year ago, if you wanted to buy a home for $500,000, you had to pay maybe $50,000 over asking price with no terms. I can't even get a home inspection. But now you can do some normal negotiation, even if it's just 2%, right? Where, okay, it's 500,000. I'll give you 475. No, 495. Okay, I'll give you 485. Okay, let's shake on 490. That's a $10,000 savings. That's just 2%. That's what's happening right now. Maybe even better discount you could get, but that won't last when rates drop and buyers come back and prices start going up. So now's the time to do that, except I'm going to tell you, don't take the price reduction. You heard me right. Don't take the price reduction. You want to create tremendous value for your customer as a mortgage professional, as a realtor, or more importantly, as a team together. What you want to do is you want to say, don't take the price reduction, use the same $10,000 that the seller's going to give you and take it as a seller contribution and apply it towards something like a 2-1 buy down. That buys your rate down the first year to 4.25 today. Next year's 5.25, then 6.25. And it's going to save you $500 a month the first year. Now, if we're right and rates drop, you can refinance. And guess what? The unused portion of the buy down gets refunded to you. You use that to pay for your refinance. So wait a second. You mean I could buy the home of my dreams today, get the rate I want today, refinance it to a low rate next year for free, and then sit back and watch as while I got a discount now, the horde of buyers comes back in and I watch prices go up, but I got in on the ground floor. You have to be able to see the opportunity While there's chaos out there, cut through it and see through it. Now, there's another thing you can do if you don't want to do the 2-1 buy down. You can do a permanent buy down. A permanent buy down means that you can disproportionately right now use that $10,000 and bring that rate down to like 5.25. So that'll save you about $250 a month, and your rate's fixed at 5.25. You don't risk it going up later. So you get the rate you want right now. But one other thing you have to remember, team. If you have a customer out there as a real estate agent, and that customer has been shopping for a home, it's not uncommon for that customer to be with you shopping for a home for several months. They may have started shopping when interest rates were much lower, and then they qualified for a much higher home based upon those interest rates. And the homes that they saw, that their eyes saw, were much nicer. But now, because rates went up, they may have less qualifications. So the homes that they qualify for may mean that they're looking at homes that they're less excited about because they're not as nice. And that can mean they're less excited about the purchase, they're less enthusiastic to go forward, and it makes your job harder. Well, guess what? If you use this seller contribution and you buy the rate down on a permanent buy down, you qualify them at the lower rate, which means in this example, they qualify for 50,000 more homes. They get right back to the homes that they had loved and wanted to buy. This is an absolute win, and this is what you need to be doing to help you beat your competition, make your customers happy, and see the opportunity, and then sit back and watch prices go up. Now, your Edge Home Finance teammate can show you the mathematics of this because they have access to show you and your customer graphically that as far as a payment goes, the 2-1 buy down is your lowest payment for the first 2.5 years. After that, the permanent buy down is your lowest payment. It is never the lower payment when you look at the price break. And what if you sold your home? Well, if you sold your home within the first 1.5 years, the 2-1 buy down is the best and lowest cost to you. That saves you the most money. Now, if you do sell your home between 18 months and 24 months in that narrow window and by a very small amount, the price break would actually be the cheapest cost. That would be the best bet. But anytime after 2 years, it's the permanent buy down. So your Edge Home Finance consultant can show your customer why they should take advantage of this. And another thing that they can show you is how to evaluate buying versus renting. Look, you've got a lot of people today that just don't believe it. They say, well, maybe I should be renting, or maybe I should rent a few years, and then come back to the market 3 or 4 years later. Let's take a look at exactly how to explain this to your customer. Example, $400,000 home, 10% down to $360 mortgage. Now, I know mortgage rates today are like 6 1/8 or 6 1/4, but let's get crazy and let's put the rate on the mortgage at 7%. And also let's get even crazier and say they never refinance to bring the rate down. So they're going to live in this home for 9 years, and for the whole 9 years, they're going to have a rate of 7%. We'll also tell them all the negatives about buying a home because it's true. Your taxes can go up 2% a year on average. You've got repair costs. You wouldn't have that if you were renting. And let's say that's $2,000 a year. And then the cost to sell. You don't have that as a renter. So let's figure the cost to sell not on today's value, but on the appreciated values. For the last 63 years, that's been 4.75% per year. So let's multiply that out and put your cost to sell on that. Now, let's also say that they get a below market rent of $3,000. But rents do go up on an annual basis, so let's account for that. So should I buy or should I rent? Well, if I want to buy, my payment's $3,500. If I rent, it's much cheaper, $3,000. And that's what people look at and they say, well, I should rent, right? Which is why you have to talk to your Edge Finance mortgage professional, because what they're going to do is show you this graph, which by the 4th year, your rent's already more expensive. And over the 9 years, in cash flow, you're going to save $33,000. But there's so much more to it. You see, you're not really $500 a month cheaper, and no one truly explains this. So the difference is not $500. It's because when you take a look at your monthly principal and interest payment, we all know that interest goes to the lender. But where does principal go? Principal is the borrower's own money. You have to explain that. And that's why this is such a powerful tool that Edge uses to show your customer. Because look, here's the example I like to use with my clients when I was doing mortgages. If I had cash in my left-hand pocket and I took it out of my left-hand pocket and put it in my right-hand pocket, is it still my cash? Of course it is. However, it's in a different location. When you write the check for your monthly principal and interest payment, the principal portion is sitting in your checking account. When the lender cashes it, where is it? That principal portion is in equity in your home. It's still your money. It's just in a different location. It's like a forced savings account. And how much is that? The reason why this is so important to show them is because it's $44,000. You see, the rent's really not cheaper. It's just that you're forcing yourself to save some of that money. Combine these two, and it's $77,000 better over the 9 years to buy the home from a cash basis. But wait a minute. What about appreciation? We know for the past 63 years, we've averaged 4.75%. So what is 4.75% on a $400,000 home compounded over 9 years? Not easy to calculate. In fact, Albert Einstein said it's the eighth wonder of the world, which is why we need tools like this, like Edge Home Finance can bring you, so you could show the customer, because it's life-changing. You know how much it amounts to? $207,000. Do the math. Just 4.75%, folks. Do the math. 9 years from now, that home should be worth $607,000. Now, when you sell it, you pay the fees to sell it, but you get a tax benefit. So overall, how much better is it to buy than rent? In this crazy example, where you've got a 7% rate and you never refinance it, it's still $254,000 better to buy than it is to rent. If it's 10 years, it's $300,000 more. If it's 6 years, $124,000. Look, team, if this customer is going to live in this home for a year and then sell it or get rid of it, yeah, rent. But if you're going to live there for more than 2 years, why in the world would you not be buying a home? Because the media told you not to? The media's been dead wrong. And how would you market this? Well, co-brand it with your Edge Home Finance consultant. They can create this for you on any of your listings, to any of the buyers you're working with, literally in seconds. And what you want to do is, the top real estate agents in the country are taking this exact thing and they're bringing it to their listing appointment and saying, here's one of the ways I'm going to market your home. This is what's going to be in the open house. This is what I'm going to put on social media, and show them the benefits. Another thing is have you thought about investment property benefit? Nobody does it because the way to analyze it doesn't exist until we created one with Edge Home Finance. And what happens is that it's a very important aspect of business, because today 1 out of every 6 transactions is an investment property. It can add a lot of transactions to what you're doing, but you got to be able to highlight it. You see, if you took a $500,000 purchase price with 25% down, and let's say the rate's 7% with 1 point, and they're going to own a home for 10 years but rent it out. Now, we know all the costs, just like we talked about, the cost to buy, to sell, the repairs, the taxes. We look at that. And then we say we're going to rent it, even if we rent it below market on a $500,000 home at $3,500 a month, rent's going to go up, but now we got to account for vacancy factor too. So let's do that. In the first year, you're going to probably lose a little cash flow, but by the 10th year, you make a lot of money. In fact, 54.5% cash on cash return, but you make your big money on appreciation and amortization. So what's the bottom line? What's the ledger that people should see? $530,000 in rental income after accounting for vacancy. Appreciation. Gross revenue, $880,000 minus all your expenses for interest, property taxes, insurance, repairs, closing costs to buy and sell, gives you a profit of $415,000. You invested $125,000. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a 332% rate of return over 10 years. Annually, compounded, it's 15.8%. You know, if you're a money manager at Fidelity, you make 15% rate of return, they put you in the Hall of Fame. See, team, people don't realize it because they don't know how to see it, and that's why this is so vital, to open people's eyes and show them how you can create net worth. Speaking of net worth, Kiplinger's recently did a huge story on net worth. So what's net worth? All your assets minus all your liabilities. And they showed that if you want to be, see where you stack up. You want to be in the top 1% in the United States, you know how much net worth you need? It's a big number, $10.8 million in net worth. How about in the top 2%? That's still really up there, $2.5 million. How about the top 5%? Man, that's a very exclusive club, the top 5%, $1 million in net worth. To be in the top 10%, $800,000. And the top half, you need $500,000. So while this is interesting, the most interesting aspect of this report was, where did this net worth come from? And they showed that on average, 2/3 of people's net worth came from home equity. That's right. You can't get rich being a renter. You can't be in these upper areas if you're avoiding real estate and if you're afraid to buy and if you're listening to the media. You have to be in the real estate game to create wealth, ladies and gentlemen. And it's because of that leverage that I've been showing you. It's because of the demographics that we've been showing you. And you know what? If you're going to do a listing, how powerful would it be to bring your own AVM? Now, you don't want to get it from Zillow because they're going to compete with you on your customers. But Edge Home Finance in seconds can give you an AVM on your property, which shows you the whole neighborhood, all the values, bedrooms, baths, what the subject property appraised value would be. How much easier does that make it to bring your client down to earth when it comes to doing that listing and getting it priced? How much better is that to have at an open house or to market the home to a potential buyer and show them what it would appraise for? How great is it if you have all the comps done for you and their locations on a map, showing you all the trends in the market? You can have that in seconds. And another thing is the real estate report card that you can get. See, what Edge can do for you is show you a real estate report card on every property and showing you how it stacks up, what the historical rates of appreciation are, what the forecast is, how much money you'd make on that home over the next coming years, what the demographics and age are, renter situation, how many households will be formed, the builder data of how much they're going to put up, affordability, unemployment, income, job creations, everything you want to know. This should be in every listing presentation to show that you're an expert and you're above your. What did we say? You have to take market share. You have to grow market share today. So every listing presentation, every open house should have these. And fortunately, your Edge Home Finance loan consultant can do all these for you instantly to help you get more listings, make more sales. Hey, remember we started off with this article from American Banker. Is it time to quit the business? Is it time to quit real estate and mortgage bank? Is it time to quit? They show you all the negatives. There's one little thing about this article that I want you to know. This article was written in 2014. So those people that did quit, they missed the 8 greatest years in the history of the industry. I know that sometimes it's easy to get discouraged. I know that the media gets negative, and I know when you see things slow down, you can get discouraged, but I'm telling you, there's a turning point that's about to happen in the very near future. It's not that far away. Now is not the time to pull back. Now's the time to lean in. Now's the time to do more. Now's the time to market and to show your customer this opportunity that's about to hit. Don't you dare get discouraged, because good times are ahead. In fact, the greatest investor of all time, Sir John Templeton, said, the time of maximum pessimism is the best time to buy. Listen to what the media is saying about housing. What would Sir John Templeton do if he was alive today? What would Warren Buffett do? Warren Buffett says, be greedy when others are fearful. This is what you should be doing. What's Goldman Sachs doing when they're buying all these properties? They're buyers today. The smartest money in the world is buying today. That's what your client needs to do. You just have to find those opportunities. And you know, thanks to great people like you, you've helped my book become a #1 bestseller called Money in the Streets, which does help you see and understand how to seize and find opportunities. And folks, there are enormous opportunities today. Now, if you want to stay in touch with me on Instagram, I am Barry Habib, or here's the QR code. And I put a lot of content on there that you could use, very short videos that talk about these concepts that you could share or show your customers to help you. Now, folks, it has been an absolute privilege to spend some time and chat with you today. And I know you might have a couple of questions, and I want to say thank you, first of all, for your time, for your very valuable time and attention. I wish you a great year ahead. God bless you guys, and don't you dare get discouraged out there, because good times are ahead. So thank you, folks.